Welcome to Darklaw Dominion, where we dive deep into the shadows, the darkest parts of ourselves that we rarely speak of, yet we all feel. I'm your host, Dominion, and in this series, we're not afraid to face the raw truths of our mental health, the battles that rage within, and the weight we carry when no one else is watching. This is where we confront the fears, the pain, the trauma we hide, and uncover the power that lies within the darkness. Because only by facing it can we truly heal and rise. Let's take this journey together. Welcome to the depths of Darklaw Dominion.
Good evening, and welcome to the Career Dominion podcast with your host, Dominion. And welcome to episode 19 of the Darklaw Dominion Mental Health Series. We have a special guest here today. I'm privileged and honored to bring to the Career Dominion platform Mrs. Alexis Skopos out
Hello.
of the wonderful Sunshine State of Florida. How are you doing, Alexis?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.
And
Thank you for coming. Been a pleasure to have you on the platform. And so with that being said, can you tell the audience a little bit about who you are?
absolutely. I am a licensed clinical mental health counselor in the state of Florida. I also am licensed in Vermont. I don't currently see anybody there though. I co-own a therapy private practice with one of my good friends. We started as two clinicians last March, and this year, as of November 2024, we have, I believe, 7 clinicians under us now. So we really went off with private practice, but I do have a lot of experience in a lot of different areas, such as I've worked in like a methadone clinic. I've worked community mental health with the welfare system, high schools, inpatient units, outpatient units, rehabs. I've been around the block when it comes to different types of treatment.
Awesome. And so again, Alexis is going to come from a wealth of knowledge, again, very versatile in the mental health and therapy coaching industry. And so we're going to talk about something today that I've actually never heard of until I met Alexis. And so it's going to be a wild ride for all of us. And we're actually going to talk about something called brain spotting. Again, brain spotting. And no, that doesn't mean like you're having an aneurysm or your brain's bleeding and, you're on your cycle or anything like that. It's nothing, like that. But it's going to be a wonderful ride inside of the Darklaw Dominion Mental Health Series, episode 19. And so as I start off with every episode, like I said, for me personally, I don't know what brain spotting is. So if you're like me, I just hope that you take one thing that resonates with you that you can apply daily to your life to, again, decree the dominion of your own mind and reveal the true light that shines. And, I encourage all the viewers and listeners alike to look and, self-reflect as, we go through. Again, Alexis has a very versatile knowledge of applicable knowledge. This isn't, something she just read in a book and she said, I'm just going to tell somebody on the podcast. These are some real life examples, and she's going to bring a lot of wealth of knowledge to this topic to help us all, again, become the best versions of ourselves. And so with that being said, what motivated you the most, or what made you passionate about, one, helping others, but also becoming counselor / therapist in the brain spotting and mental health realm?
Well, I think the big answer to that is trauma. Brain spotting is a trauma modality, and I always told myself I wanted to be a trauma therapist after a very colorful childhood. It was definitely inspiring to not have anybody feel the way I felt at a very young age. I struggled a lot after my mom died, and I was chronically suicidal is a good description. And that's kind of where I found my purpose of wanting to be a therapist and helping people, especially, those who are very suicidal, to find little glimmers in life. And, now is not forever. So that's definitely has been the inspiration. But for brain spotting specifically, once I was out of school, I really wanted a niche. And, EMDR is very, very popular. But I did my own session of EMDR and I was like, I'm going to get sick. All that movement, no. And a few years later, I heard something about brain spotting. I was like, well, what the hell is this? That sounds kind of cool. I looked a little bit more into it and I have done multiple trainings by this point, and it's something that it kind of sounds silly, but it feels like fate because I absolutely love it. But it's a really cool trauma modality that a lot of people really aren't familiar with yet. And that also has drawn me to it because I want there to be options for people's healing.
Awesome, awesome. I love that you said that because again, um, I encourage everybody to, find your niche, right? Find what works for you. Again, she said it was like fate, her calling, if you will. And so, before we kind of dive into it, I just want to pause and say, you know, um, one thing that she's alluded to is seek higher counsel, right? Again, every one of us has had a suicidal thought or creep in or, had suicidal tendencies or maybe everyone, even if we all graduated high school, at least for the most part, or went to high school, right? School in general, we all had classmates that, maybe took their own life. We've all had family members that have had suicidal thoughts. So even if, like I said, you personally haven't experienced that to a major degree, we all have people that are close to us that, go through things behind closed doors that may be feeling depressed, suicidal anxiety, etc. And so just want to encourage all those listening and viewing that I want to issue a challenge before we get started. If you know someone that is, struggling with suicidal thoughts, or if you know someone just struggling in general, the challenge I have for everyone that listens and views up here today is to reach out to one person and just send words of encouragement, and do it without expecting anything in return. Don't, do it for money. Don't do it for them to say thank you and get a pat on the back and self gratification. Just do it, out of kindness. Maybe it's your family member, send them a quick text. Maybe it's a coworker, just, pat your head around their shoulder and just say, hey, are you doing all right? So that's the challenge that I want to issue, including both of us will take that challenge as well. And so, with that being said, can you explain to the audience, what the MDTR is?
Absolutely. So brain spotting is derived from EMDR. It is instead of moving points, it is a fixed point. But the way this all works, which is super cool, is I'm sure you've heard of the saying, the eyes of the beholder, or you could see people through their eyes. Well, it's more kind of that's pretty physiologically accurate because your eyes are connected to your midbrain, which is the controller of a lot of things, especially it holds the trauma. Talk therapy is great. It's been around for a long time, but unfortunately, it only really stimulates our neocortical area of the brain. And that's great, but that's not deep enough when it comes to very, very heavy trauma. So, with brain spotting and EMDR, it is going in visually to your midbrain, taking out that little box of trauma and kind of like rewriting the narrative. We are trying to pull out an emotional charge and hopefully create safer feeling neural pathways. But I'll get into that a little bit more. But the really cool thing about it is this is just the way I always kind of explain it to clients. Think about somebody that you're talking to and you notice their eyes kind of going somewhere. That is science. That is where that brain spot is. They are pulling out that information from that little box from where they're looking that's attached to their midbrain. And that it's so deep in our brain that we can actually rewire the things, which is super flippin' cool. But what it really comes down to is making hard neural pathways smaller. And there's a whole form of brain spotting called expansion. So what that means, instead of going in for like a trauma box, we're going into a positive box. We're going into a box that we want to expand and make better, such as, I believe in myself. So we would find that little brain spot, which I'll describe that process in a moment, and we fixate on it. And then your brain starts naturally processing it in just a different kind of way. A big kind of outcome of brain spotting is clarity. It definitely brings a different kind of perspective to your thinking, and it's just naturally your brain doing it. Because the incredible thing is our body knows what it needs to heal. It's just all of our defense mechanisms keep us from it because it wants to keep us safe. So brain spotting also kind of has the concept of you're pulling out all of kind of this trauma, or if we're doing expansion, what this we want to expand on in a safe place. There is no real threat in the room with us. And the most important part of brain spotting is what we call attunement. That is, let me back up. Technically, you can do brain spotting on your own. It is something that we call gaze spotting. Did you ever just kind of like you were thinking about something and you sat there and you noticed you were like looking right there for a long period of time and you weren't sure why? You were accessing a brain spot. And we do tend to do it a lot with daydreaming and such, but going in more intentional can actually be a form of smaller brain spotting. It is not recommended though, because you don't have that safe area. The power of human connection is incredibly important in this process. So the therapist is on the other side and is actually holding the thing that is attached to your brain spot. So we have a wand I have like a blue ball at the end of it, and I just swipe it across your vision field. And once we hit a brain spot, people tend to feel it very somatically. This is what we call inside window. And so once that spot gets hit, I've had people, they're like, what the hell are we doing? And then I hit the spot and they're like, oh, I felt my stomach drop. My anxiety went up. My neck hurts. Why do I have this weird pain? And it's always so fascinating because it shows so differently for everybody. But so needless to say, I go across your vision field and we hit a spot. And I don't do much after that. I am here to basically just be attuned with you as your brain does the processing. And that is really what a brain spotting session looks like. And it's very funny because if you saw it without any context, you'd probably be like, what the hell am I paying her for? But it is such a powerful form of healing. And there's a lot of different kinds of it too. But I do just want to take a second. And is there anything you'd like me to clarify on? I threw a lot at you.
Yes. Again, I appreciate you sharing that. And it kind of reminds me, like when you said daydream, it kind of reminds me of, when you get that light, like cartoons back in the day when they had that light bulb pop in their head. And it actually reminds me of when I started podcasting. And so for those of you that are listening, how I started to create Dominion, I actually just woke up one morning at 4 something in the morning, ready for work. And I was just like, I think I'm going to start my own podcast. And then I just started researching, and how I actually came up with the name to create Dominion was actually one of those light bulb moments. And I was like, it actually derives from the book of Genesis, of subdue, fruitful, multiply, and have dominion of the earth. And I was like, dominion of the mind. And, me being, again, a domestic violence survivor and also advocate for mental health, I was like, boom, I got it. And again, I had that light bulb moment. And it kind of resonates with what you're saying, with, you know, taking that trauma of what I went through as a kid and, developing it into a platform to help others. And I love everything you said that. And I love that you say, I hope you guys are listening, and as you listen and view, because what she said is it hits everybody different. Again, everything in life, I want to just expand really quickly. Everything in life is a trigger. You know, if you have, there's, PTSD or different terms for those triggers, but everything in life is a trigger. Let's say, you got attacked by a dog as a kid and you're afraid of dogs. And let's say you're just walking to your door one night, you hear a loud pit bull, bark, you're going to jump, right? And you're going to be like, oh my, you're going to get that anxiety. You're going to, start sweating and things of that nature. What if you were a domestic violence survivor and you thought you saw somebody that looked like your abuser or your assailant? You're going to kind of tense up and be like, I thought that was, Johnny, or I thought that was Sarah, or, just different examples of that nature. And again, we all have triggers. Let's say you got food poisoning and you found out you were allergic to mushrooms. Now every time you see, a Philly cheesesteak or a pizza, Supreme Pizza, you're like, you automatically, your brain is saying, hey, don't you touch that, we can't have that. And it starts from a young age. And, that kind of resonates with, what you're saying is, essentially you're creating that safe space to attack your inner self. And so I just love that you expanded on, a synopsis of, attacking that inner trauma. And so with that being said, I know people are like, how much would a session of this cost or things of that nature? And so real quickly, I'll let you kind of go through the cost and also, what entails like the first session. I know a lot of people would be curious on, how would I get started?
That's a great question. As far as price wise, it is calculated like a normal session. So for my practice, Be Kind to Mine, self pay is $105. We do sliding scales though, because unfortunately, therapy is a luxury. I would love to give it away, but I am also poor. But it is a luxury, unfortunately. But also we do take insurances, and a lot of practitioners do as well. If you are interested in finding a practitioner in your area, I highly recommend going to brainspotting.com. They have everything on there. A lot of practitioners, consultants, everything. But as far as the session, so I will tell you kind of what the framework of a session looks like, because the initial one is it's not different in any way other than you experiencing the feeling for the first time, if that makes sense. So kind of what the setup is, we decided what we want to work on. So let's do a hypothetical. I want to work on my domestic violence. We get that person activated, is what we call it. That is just kind of getting that brain spot open, getting them thinking about it, kind of getting that midbrain opened up so that we can actually open up the doors. So once they're activated, I'll usually ask for 0 to 10. Where are you? I like people to be about a 6 or 7 for the first time, if not more, because then we're really going to hit that brain spot really well. So once they get activated, they're at let's say an 8. They're really starting to feel the somatic responses of it as well. The anxiety, the whatever. So I would say, all right, so now let's start. And it's literally only until they're activated enough. There are what we call different frames or setups, which are just different ways to get you activated, different kinds of questions to ask to get where we need to go, essentially. But a general brain spotting is we'll get you activated on the event, not feeling very comfortable. I'll raise my wand and make sure it's eye level with you. And then I'll drag it from one side of my screen to the other side. Incredibly slow, though, because your brain is picking up on where it's at in the brain spot before you kind of realize it, and then you'll feel it. So, okay, do. Let's say it's right here. Once I find where it's at on this x-axis, I'll go up and down to make sure we have the full potential of the brain spot. So we go up, you don't feel it anymore. Okay, so let's go down. Let's say you feel it right here. The next part of the session, and this is what is so different about brain spotting as a modality, you could sit there in silence and process, and I won't say anything. It's just, it could be a very quiet experience. You could tell me absolutely everything you're experiencing. Last night I actually had a training, and the lady just sat there and looked at the spot for 40 minutes, didn't say much. And at the end of it, she was like, "Oh my gosh, I feel so much better." And I'm like, "Oh, snap. Okay, I didn't do much. Cool." But it it's just a very interesting dynamic because it's so what we're not taught to do in therapy. We're taught to talk. This talk can be important in this, but it's about the processing. There we did a demo the other day. Didn't even know what the topic was. The person just started crying and they went in. And by the end of it, that person felt better because their brain just did the thing. And then they're like, "Oh, by the way, here was our issue. Thank you for letting us know." But it's a very wildly different type of technique. So really what to expect: come in, get uncomfortable about the situation. We'll find your spot and hold it. And we hold it for about 30 minutes, if not longer. And then we'll work on kind of grounding you back and bringing you in. And then we do a debrief. And some people, they only need one session and they feel like they're at a 0. Some people need a few more, and that's okay. It's a very individualized treatment, and it's also, while we have setups and frames, it's not very structured on purpose because it is so personalized and it's so fluid, which is very cool because EMDR is very, very scripted and very by the book, and this is not. It's really up to your clinician and the relationship you have with them and them knowing you. And just, we don't guide, we call following the comment. The client is the expert of their life. Their brain knows what it needs to do. They know what's best. We're just there as support and to make sure that your brain doesn't do anything crazy.
Awesome, awesome. I love that you said that because I'm curious because a lot of times I love that you say like the talk, we're taught to like talk about your feelings. And a lot of people, I'm like an empath, so like I have just a natural like feeling personality. And a lot of times, we've all seen like the mass shootings or people committing heinous crimes that have therapists, and it's like, but he went to therapy or I tried therapy or, and first thing I encourage the audience, always seek higher counsel. Don't just not try therapy because of your of fear, right? But also with the brain spotting, what's cool about it from what I've gathered so far is that if you're somebody that's empathic, or maybe you're just a quiet person, you can feel the same, if not more impactful healing and treatment and kind of like an awakening, if you will, of yourself without having to say much. And I think that that alone, is liberating because a lot of people kind of shy away from therapy in general because it's like, again, like for example, the domestic violence, dang, I gotta, um, a lot of it first is like the reason I asked the cost question, because that's the first thing. It's like, am I gonna pay $1,000 to, cry, right? And, that's the one thing. But the next thing outside of cost is, I don't talk about my feelings. I keep to myself. I'm introverted. Or I'm gonna have to, find a clinician. I'm gonna have to find a therapist, and then I'm gonna have to, maybe this happened 20 something years ago. Uh, Again, for me, Thanksgiving, the day after Thanksgiving will be 14 years for me, and it's like, dang, I gotta relive this and talk about it. But again, in the brain spotting in this case, I could, like you said, go in and, not say a word outside of, thinking. And that's what I love about it. The explanation thus far is you're essentially letting the client do the work for themselves. You're just there to guide. It kind of reminds me of Doctor Strange, where he was like, teach me, or like the Get Out movie where she was like with the T and she said sing. And it's just like when Doctor Strange was like, teach me. Um, there's also one other movie I know it's for those people that like X-Men. It reminded me of Apocalypse when he told Magneto to reach into the ground and all the rocks and gravel kind of like came up. And um, yeah, Dominion's a Marvel DC nerd, so I'll end my tangent there with the relics, if you will. But again, that's what I love about it. And so, with that being said, within your specific clients, without again getting into too personal details, but what would you say is your percentage of people that come in and very outgoing, sanguine type, talk a lot, and have you seen more results with those that are, like I said, introvert and kind of shy and don't really talk much?
I'll be honest, with brain spotting, I really haven't seen that difference, but I think just from like my photos and things, I also attract a certain kind of client. So that also kind of makes that harder to answer. But I think with brain spotting, you hit the nail on the head. It's so flexible that if somebody comes in and they don't want to give you every nitty gritty detail again, they don't have to. And the other cool thing about it is we don't just have to go in and do trauma. We can do expansion work. We can build those better pathways. We can also, there's something called dream spotting that I actually learned about last night. And that is processing one of your dreams and kind of getting to the core root of why it's in your subconscious while you're sleeping. It's just so neat. And there's kind of like the last thing really big I want to go over with it is there's also a resource model. So, when you say somebody, especially with significant trauma, like, hey, let's go into Pandora's box and start pulling out things. That's terrifying, of course. So I always ask, kind of the joke in the brain spotting community was, do you want to sit by a lake or do you want to run through the fire? Running through the fire would be that activation spot I was talking about in traditional brain spotting. However, sitting by the lake, that's what we call resourcing. That is finding an activating spot, but then finding a calm spot. We want to find the spot where, yes, we are thinking about this uncomfortable thing, but it's not outside of our window of tolerance yet. It's a slower way of processing, but it's still processing the trauma without it being so kind of like bold and in your face to where you have to relive it all. So it's really neat. There's a lot of different techniques. When it comes to like the resource model, and some of the setups, we only use one eye. It's whatever eye is most feeling it most powerful. So it's a very, very flexible thing. And it always cracks me up in trainings. They're like, well, what do I do with this or with that? And last night I was taking phase 4, which is by the guy who created it. And he cracked me up because for every answer like that, he's like, I don't know. Use your intuition. I don't know. I'm like, fair enough. And he's right, because we watched him do a demo, and I mean, his intuition was perfect. So I think it's really cool in learning people.
Awesome, awesome. And again, like you said, what I enjoying of learning it is like the versatility of it all. It's not a one trick pony, if you will. It's like, hey, you gotta pay your $100 and let me look through my book and let me hold my magic wand like the Fairly Odd Parents and Cosmo, and boom, you're healed, right? It's like, again, what you said at the beginning, it's the client, hey, what do you want to do today? Kind of like, how do you want to heal today? That's where I get from it. And so, with that being said, what are some, you know, how would you recommend brain spotting to someone that's never heard of it, or someone that is interested in kind of going through the fire, if you will?
Yeah. So definitely starting with the brainspotting.com and finding somebody in your area, just because they are so strict about licensing. And then really assessing with your clinician with where you're at. There are a lot of people who don't feel like they're able to dive into it, and that is so fair. But people don't always give themselves the most credit either. So what I would say is talk with your clinician, see where you're at, and maybe try what I try to do with my clients is something that is a little less activating to start so they know what it feels like. So if somebody's coming in with a predominant issue of domestic violence trauma, I might do something on a smaller scale first so that they really know what it's going to feel like so that they're not deep in this trauma and also like what the hell is going on with my body on top of it. That's probably the best ways to go about it, at least the way I usually try to.
Awesome, awesome. I'm glad you said that because again, like you said, the brain spotting is so new. Like I said, I've never heard of it till I met you the other day. I was like, oh, brain spotting, that's interesting. And again, it's just like I said, so many resources. What I want to convey to those viewers and listening is, there's so many resources we have, at our disposal. So I would challenge everyone right now to like kind of like self-reflect and look in the mirror and, are you utilizing all your resources? Again, check out thebrainspotting.com. Again, take everything, like we said, take something that resonates with you. Maybe it's like, I always encourage people to learn and not operate out of fear, right? Research, you don't have to go to a session tomorrow. It might take you 3 months of researching and to find the right clinician, to find the right, what works for you before you even think about doing your first session. We're not saying, hey, jump in. Take the time to, research and see if it's something that's right for you. And so with that being said, what has helped you, in your journey, not just with brain spotting, but with, you know, what have you seen within your therapeutic career thus far? And what is your biggest success story out of those you have coached thus far?
All right, that's a good question. I think the biggest success stories are the ones where you have people who have really lost all hope. They really feel that there is nothing here. And then after, months of work and them really doing the work and, wanting it and just coming together and finding the roots of things and actually seeing them wake up and, not want to die. That is, I think, the most powerful thing in the world. There's one client in particular I'm thinking of where we started at like negative hope. And I don't know what it was. I think one time she told me, she's like, you're the first person who actually like listened and made me feel that I wasn't just burdening people with this story. And sometimes that's all people need. And just the power of connection and the power of feeling safe enough to be vulnerable and not feel safe. But that particular client, I would say, is one of the better success stories because, again, I mean, if you've been suicidal, which and I think a lot of people have at some point, you know what it feels like to be in that dark of a spot. The last thing you want to hear is somebody trying to instill some hope or, just it's hard to wake up and get out of bed, let alone do anything else for yourself. So I think that's a huge one. I mean, there's always little wins. When I first started my career, I had really bad imposter syndrome, and I'd keep a little notebook with no names, obviously, but like little wins, like client said they really appreciated session today. It's just change happens. It what seems smally. You don't see everything change overnight with especially therapy. We didn't get here overnight. But if you hold on and you do the things, you can get where you want to go. And also, I mean, therapy has the reputation for, you only go if something's wrong with you. That's not true. And I mean, well, something's wrong with all of us to some degree. I think just also destigmatizing I mean, at least that's my goal. And I've had a lot of clients also take a different viewpoint on therapy itself as well, because, they think they're going to show up to session and I'm going to give you all the answers to your life. But you have those. I just help you, you know, find them in your brain.
I'm glad you shared that. And I want to echo one specific thing that you said as you were going through those success stories and just your overall journey thus far. And that is faith without work is dead. Again, you have to be willing to go to therapy, willing to work. Again, the success story of someone started with negative hope and was able to grow through that. And the only way they were actually willing to put in the work. And so as you're listening and viewing, are you willing to put in the work to actually heal? And again, like you said, reversing the stigma on, they always say, there's a saying says, build your roof before it rains. Or, just like an oil change on your car, right? You don't wait till all four tires are flat, transmission's out, engine's out. You go get the oil change as soon as the light comes on, or even before, as soon as you read the little mileage on the sticker and the windshield, you're like, oh, I got 100 miles, next couple of days, I need to get to the Jiffy Lube or get to the dealership and get my oil changed. Same thing with, tire pressure. Oh, it's low. A lot of cars now have the automatic sensors like, oh, let me go to the gas station or let me go to the, tire place and get some free air and get my air pump. Same thing with, your health, right? And your mental health matters. And that's what I really want to echo currently is just, your mental health matters. And I also want to let everyone know that's listening and viewing that everybody's story matters. It doesn't have to be as, morbid as, almost taking your life or as deep as, domestic violence. It could just be as simple as thinking that you need to lose weight or thinking that you're not pretty enough or thinking that you're not smart enough, or it starts with little things. It's like, I don't think I can get that promotion because they don't like me. My boss doesn't like me. I want to, if you're college age or school age listening and viewing, some of the younger, Decree of Dominion fans out there, you know, that girl or that guy doesn't like me, so I'll never, find a successful relationship, or, I'll never get an A on that test or ace that bar exam for my law school because my family didn't graduate college or they barely, my parents barely finished high school. It's little things like that that you tell yourself every day that kind of compounds if you let it to that negativity that leads to that suicidal and some of that deeper, trauma. And again, everybody's trauma matters. And so even if you're, you know, and it doesn't have to be about class. I want to say that. What I mean by that is it isn't just because whether you're, rich or poor or came from a family of money or, came from the trenches, again, everybody's, story matters. Everybody, don't diminish your story or, your trauma, because it's not what society deems as serious. Anything that's not, in alignment with your goals and your dreams is serious, right? And so I just encourage the listeners, audience, the viewers as well to, you know, have confidence and, you know, own your scars, own your story. You can be, the best version of yourself, if you, again, like Alexis has said, is work. And
There is one thing I want to ping off of you on that too. What you tell yourself, you manifest. And I'm not just saying that as a concept. It is, if you keep telling yourself, oh, I'm such an idiot, I'm such an idiot, you are quite literally strengthening the neural pathways that believe you're an idiot. So it's not just, words. That's why words are so important and so impactful. And okay, let's say, your dad called you an idiot growing up. That, you saying it to yourself, is also reinforcing this core belief that was put in your head by your dad. So words and language are very, very important, and you don't want to manifest a negative thing. And again, those neural pathways, they are strong. You don't want to feed those.
I love that you said that. And again, it's always, what to tell yourself, in the mirror, again. And real quick before we wrap up, the person that you're looking in the mirror is your greatest or your worst enemy. It's your greatest adversary. It's undefeated, you know, whether you want it to win or whether you want it to lose, you get to choose. And I'll leave it at that. And with that being said, what are some last minute tips, motivation, just words of encouragement, and also tell the audience where they can find you?
Absolutely. So I think the biggest thing is now is not forever. There was a year ago, I was in a really, really bad spot. And a year later, it's amazing what has changed. And I think that could go for a lot of people. We just can't give up on where you want to go. Now is not forever. And also definitely recommending maybe find you a brain spotting practitioner, a little biased, but also just lastly, you don't have to be broken or something so fundamentally wrong with you to go to therapy. Sometimes it's just nice to give yourself permission to just exist and have somebody hold space for you. Don't ever forget the power of connection.
Awesome. And then let the audience know where they can find you as well.
Sorry. I am at Be Kind to Mind Counseling in Florida. You can just search us. We'll come right up. Our website is bekindtomind.com. You can also shoot me an email if you have any questions around brain spotting or anything, actually. It is Alexis at bekindtomind.com. And if you're in the state of Florida, we can help you.
Awesome. And so, again, before we get out of here, a lot of was said today about brain spotting. Again, if you or yourself know anybody suffering from suicidal thoughts, again, there are resources there to help you. And we encourage you to put in the work to manifest a better life for yourself. Like I said, one step in the direction of immortality and one step closer to glory. You have the ability to become the best version of yourself and to create the dominion of your own mind, to reveal the true light that shines. And again, everybody's tasked with this homework assignment from Dominion. Reach out to somebody that is going through something or may have, depression, anxiety, maybe they're just going through a rough time. Reach out to them, whether it be by text, whether it's a coworker at work tomorrow. Reach out to them, reach one, teach one, and encourage them to push on. Again, like Alexis said, now is not never. And again, you don't have to be a broken Cinderella glass slipper to go to therapy. And so with that being said, this has been episode 19 of Darklaw Dominion Mental Health Series with your hosts, Dominion and Alexis Skopos, out of the wonderful Sunshine State of Florida. Hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their night. And until next time on the Creative Dominion, thank you.
Thank you for joining me on this journey into the depths of Darklaw Dominion. Remember, it's in the darkest parts of ourselves that we often find the greatest strength. Facing that darkness is not a sign of weakness, it's the path to healing, growth, and reclaiming control of your life. If this series resonates with you, or if you're looking for more empowering stories on healing and reclaiming your power, make sure to follow Decree of Dominion on Facebook, Spotify, and YouTube. There, we continue the conversation on mental health, domestic violence, and relationships, offering hope and support. Until next time, keep exploring the shadows, keep seeking your truth, and keep fighting for your light.